New Orleans. A vehicle ploughed into crowds celebrating the New Year in a popular street in the city. One official says an investigation is active and ongoing. However, Mayor LaToya Cantrell says the city has been impacted by a terrorist attack, and she has been in direct contact with the White House. She urges residents to avoid the area, saying a unified command is in place. At least 10 people have been killed after a vehicle struck a crowd celebrating the New Year in New Orleans. That's according to emergency officials. Another 30 injured in the incident, which took place on the corner of Bourbon Street, a very popular street in the French Quarter of the city. It happened at around 3 a.m. local time. There were also unconfirmed reports of the driver of that vehicle emerging from the vehicle, gunshots being fired, police firing gunshots back. But we have the mayor now of New Orleans, LaToya Cantrell, saying that the city has been impacted by a terrorist attack, saying that she is in contact with the White House. I would imagine that perhaps the numbers that we're seeing, the figures on casualties and those injured, could well go up. It'll be interesting to see actually in the new year how the President Biden and President Trump respond to this, what might appear to be a terrorist incident that has taken place in America on New Year's Eve, targeting members of the general public. We're also learning that 2 police officers appear to have been shot in what is being described now as a terrorist incident over in New Orleans. A dreadful way, frankly, to start the new year. Innocent people out celebrating, looking forward to what's ahead. And we're reminded about the monsters that stalk our societies, quite frankly, around the world in the West. People with a bloody and evil intent to kill and to maim for their twisted ideologies are devastating for New Orleans, which of course has had many tragedies in the past as well. Think of Hurricane Katrina, a community that has been rocked before by mass casualty events, waking up on 2025. What we do know is that it's been reported that it seems the incident was very intentional. It started around 3:15 in the morning. A man driving a pickup truck on Bourbon Street. That's according to Superintendent Anne Kirkpatrick. It was driving at a very fast pace with very intentional behaviour, not a drink driving incident, a pickup truck. But it just makes, honestly, I've got a lump in my throat. But when these things happen, it makes you despair. You wonder how on earth there are people out there who would do these things. Yeah, it's terrible.
It's important to remember that for all there will be the desire for people to say kumbaya and don't look back in anger and all of that, there are people at large in our society, in other societies, who hate our way of life, who hate us, and are prepared to do these appalling things to harm, not power structures, not politicians, not anything like that. Ordinary people, often the most vulnerable people. We've seen that in the UK last year. We've seen that across Europe, actually, people targeting the most vulnerable in society. And it is not unchristian to say we don't have to tolerate this. We shouldn't tolerate
the intolerable.
And it should not be our society that changes to try to
accommodate
these people. That's not the direction that we should have to go. The fact that we have to put large steel crash barriers across London in this day and age is not tolerable. It's not acceptable.
It is the people increasingly happen.
It is the people who threaten that way of life who shouldn't be here in the first place. And some people will say, it various different ideologies enforce this. Of course they do. Society shouldn't have to tolerate extremism from any direction. When it is coming from these directions and people are using violence to try to achieve whatever their means are, and let's be clear, it's simply destruction, we shouldn't have to put up with that.
It's interesting as well, we became sort of accustomed to, during the sort of ISIS period, if you will, about a decade ago, ISIS releasing footage of videos of horrible things going on, beheadings and so forth. What's interesting is that is still going on. That is also a huge uptick now of terrorist organisations committing the same atrocities, but it's almost like we're not talking about it anymore. It's almost as if the West have gone, oh, well, this is what happens now. We'll just quietly build barricades. We'll just quietly cancel events. We'll just quietly gaslight the general public as to the nature of the situation we may be in.
I don't think it's going to work. And this is the thing, as much as people can, they can shriek about the rise of the AfD in Germany, or the Front National, or whatever it's called now, National Rally in France, or the fact that there is now a centre far-right, whatever it is now, government in charge in Italy, which is now determined to be not quite far-right enough for a lot of people, Giorgia Meloni. That is the direction of travel in Europe. And it is not because Europeans are bad people. It is not because they are inherently awful, racist people who have no interest in diversity or tolerance. It is because a lot of Western countries have gone through a process over the last few decades of trying to be accommodating, of trying to face racism head on. Everything from Holocaust Memorial to the legacies of empires and colonialism, and they have had it thrown back in their faces. This is the thing.
There has been no movement from the other side. It's constantly been, you're a racist, you've got to change your attitude, you can't say that, that policy won't work, oh, perhaps we've just done it a bit too quickly. No. What has been committed across the West is mass cultural vandalism. You cannot have one extant population, whether it's Westerners, white Westerners, Anglo-Saxons, French, Germans, Prussians, Russians, Czechs, Australians, Indians, doesn't matter. You cannot have one extant population and suddenly go, we're going to move a completely culturally different group of people into your country, into your community, who aren't going to mix, who don't want to know your way of life, in fact are going to threaten you, attack you, change what you've been used to, and expect the original people to go, well, that's fine.
But also,
what's so ridiculous is this is what we're taught all the time about colonialism. Oh, wasn't it bad what we did to the Aborigines? Isn't it bad what happened to the American Indians? Isn't it bad, all this white colonization? And yet when people in the West say, we're not happy when we're seeing our local church become a mosque. We're not happy when we're having to build road barriers because there are people who are directly threatening our lives. We're not happy when we go to the local supermarket. I wanted to buy some meat the other day from my local supermarket, small supermarket, went over the road. It was sort of Christmas period, so the funny opening hours, a lot of stuff had sold out. But the only stuff left to buy was all halal. And I was like, I'm not buying it. Why is that here?
It's morally
all the restaurants now on my street in the centre of London advertise in their window that the meat is halal. I'm like, I'm not going to go and eat there then. I'm sorry, I don't like my animals suffering.
That's an entirely separate conversation about what should or shouldn't be tolerated in a civilised society. It is unnecessary to kill animals in those set of circumstances, and I think if your religion means that much to you, then you don't actually have to eat that animal.
I don't see why we have to have halal here at all.
It is. Let's also be clear. It is not just in Islam and halal meat that is barbarically killed. Let's be clear, it is not the only one.
I know, I'm aware of that.
The thing that is always the prism through which we're always told we have to look at this is, well, you've got to be careful in case the far right does something, in case there's a reaction. And I would have thought that the lesson of European history and American history is that you get the far right, you get racism, but you also, on the other hand, you get communism, you get the desire to level society and slaughter just as many people through other means. When society there is upheaval, be it through stupid war, stupid economic policies, when you shake society and you rock the foundation so that people are insecure, that's when you get the extremist reaction. And I'm sorry, but bringing in people from other cultures and failing to have them, buy into society, just assuming you can drop them there. The UK, the United States, lots of other parts of Europe are very good examples of what happens if you bring in communities who want to assimilate. The United States is a very good example. Britain is a very good example, actually, of the Jewish community in the UK, the East African Asian community in the UK, the Chinese community in the UK. There are lots of examples. Polish again, of very different cultures, different cultures that come here, and if they want to assimilate, there are not problems on the same. The Caribbean as well, communities, actually, it's possible. But when you bring in people on a huge scale and there is no pressure on them to accumulate, and it is the other people who are told, no, you must accommodate them, that's when the problems start. And you're seeing this now in the United States. We're all told the US is this wonderful melting pot until it stops telling people, you're here to be American.
I heard the most astonishing thing. I was listening to the radio this morning. It's a Polish foreign minister having an interview.
Oh, is this Radek Sikorski?
And he was saying, oh, well, we need governments in the West. He was being questioned about people being worried about immigration and other parties getting more prominence. And he said, well, perhaps everything's been done a bit too quickly. No, perhaps just don't do it at all. And then he said, oh, well, the problem is we need to now now start listening to the people. Otherwise, what happens is populists take advantage of the situation. I'm like, hold on.
Yeah.
You're saying that actually people who are listening to the people and saying this is what we should do have no right to do that. You should be doing it instead when you haven't been doing that. Jog on.
Yeah, this is Radek.
Establishment elitism. Go away.
It is Radek Sikorski you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. He, along with the current leader of Poland, Donald Tusk, these are, I mean, they're dyed-in-the-wool Europhiles. They're people. They are people who a couple of years ago, I mean, their reaction to Brexit, amongst other things, was absolute fury, not astonishment, anger that the people had had the temerity to make a decision, as if Mr. Sikorski or Mr. Tusk actually should have any involvement in British politics at all. But no, this is somebody who has gone on a bit of a journey, if you like, over the last couple of years.
It's interesting
and is beginning to see what is politically necessary for that type of politics to survive. And it's only now at the very tail end that they're actually bowing to it.
Right. Oh, here we go. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Breaking news. The FBI has said this is not a terrorist event, but improvised explosive devices have been found. The investigation into the incident in New Orleans have been handed to the FBI. The assistant special agent in charge joins the news conference to say this is not a terrorist event. Instead, she says there have been improvised explosive devices found in the area. We are working on confirming if this is a viable device or not. She urges people to stay away from the area until officials can figure out what's going on.